Just so you know, this show is about scary stuff. So don't say I didn't warn you guys. And remember, don't be scared.
Episode 99. Current cases in the news. War Baby here with another episode of Murderous Minors. The official start of summer is just about here, so it's a great time to cover the remainder of recent cases from the first half of 2021. Just as the first month of the new year began to blend away, 17-year-old Raymond Childs III was planning to spend the night at his girlfriend's house. That is, until his father called him in the early morning hours of January 24th, 2021 and told him he needed to get home. The teen's girlfriend went on the Uber app on her phone and requested a ride for him to his home on Adams Street in Indianapolis, Indiana. According to reports, Child's 15-year-old brother recalled that, once his brother had returned home, their father had told him that he was going to be in trouble later. Childs III had left home without permission. The 15-year-old was downstairs in the basement master bedroom of their parents, Raymond Childs Jr. and Kezzy Childs, both 42, when his father asked him to fill up his water bottle. While he was doing so, the teen heard a gunshot, then his 13-year-old sister yelled down from upstairs that Raymond had shot Elijah, their 18-year-old brother. The 15-year-old brother had hit the laundry room floor immediately after hearing several more gunshots, and as his father went to the stairs and said, "What is that?" Childs III reached the basement, and he heard his father's last words, quote, "I'm sorry, Raymond, I love you." The younger brother ran for his life into the night, however, Childs III was right behind him. He tried to give his big brother the $40 he had in his pocket, but in return he was shot in the arm, then the leg. The bullets fired at the 15-year-old's head somehow magically missed, and then his brother was gone. Childs III had taken 2 bags full of clothes and shoes, plus his father's Draco firearm, a long-barreled semi-automatic pistol styled to resemble an AK-47 and use its magazines, which he had used to shoot his brother outside. Casings from that gun were later recovered, as were the 9mm casings from inside the home and the 9mm handgun belonging to Childs Jr., abandoned in the basement with he and his wife's bodies. The lone survivor of the massacre was able to make his way to the nearest home, shouting that he'd been shot and begging for help, prompting the homeowner to call 911. Arriving officers found the wounded 15-year-old on the front porch of that home just before 4 a.m., applying a tourniquet near the gunshot wound to his arm, likely saving his life. He needed surgery and began disclosing more details about the incident to police while at the hospital. He identified his shooter as Raymond Ronald Lee Childs III, and when staff inquired about contacting his parents for treatment authorization, he was able to tell them that his parents had also been shot and he believed them to be dead. In quick succession, 2 citizen app notifications were sent out to users monitoring the area. The first one being when the younger Child's son was shot outside and called out for help, and the second when officers learned of and responded to the multiple shooting victims inside the Adams Street home. Childs III's girlfriend received both of those citizen app notifications within minutes of each other after he had returned to her home sometime between 3 and 4 a.m. She asked him if he knew anything about these shootings after he'd rolled up in a white Chrysler car that she'd never seen before, saying that his father had kicked him out. Police responding to the scene on Adams Street found the front door open and every occupant of the home shot to death. Missing was the 17-year-old son, whose bedroom was searched and his cell phone found there, though he was not. When police visited the KFC restaurant where the teen worked, his manager informed them that he and his girlfriend had been scheduled to work that morning but had called in sick. Also noticeably missing from the residence was a white Chrysler, registered to Raymond Childs Jr. but believed to be driven by his oldest son in the home. They found the car later on Sunday at Childs III's girlfriend's house, hours after the pair had spoken to his older sisters by phone, then gone by his home, where he had acted emotionally and erratically, in a way those who knew him had never seen. His girlfriend took him back to her house, where they hung out until about 2 p.m., at which time she drove him to a relative's home and dropped him off. When police located the white Chrysler at her home and pulled her over once she left the house, she told them everything that had happened since Childs III got called home by his dad, including his odd behavior at the scene earlier that morning. She also told investigators that while driving him to his family member's house earlier, she had hit the brakes and saw a fully loaded clip that would fit the Draco roll out of some of his clothes and onto the floor. She left him at the home on Sunday afternoon, and soon after, a cousin who had traveled to Indianapolis upon hearing of the shooting picked him up. He saw the Draco handgun in Childs III's waistband and demanded he hand it over, since he was licensed to carry and the teen obviously was not. The man knew the gun belonged to his older cousin, the teen's father, and told police so when he turned it over to them. On Monday, January 25th, the alleged shooter was arrested at his relative's home, and on Thursday, January 28th, 2021, 5 days after the worst massacre Indianapolis, Indiana had seen in over a decade, the Marion County Prosecutor's Office charged 17-year-old Raymond Ronald Lee Childs III with 6 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and carrying a handgun without a license. Killed that night were the alleged shooter's parents, Kezzie Childs and Raymond Childs Jr., both 42 years old, his younger sister Rita Childs, 13, his older brother Elijah Childs, aged 18, his pregnant girlfriend, 19-year-old Kiara Hawkins, and their unborn son. The 15-year-old brother who ran for his life in the early morning hours was the only survivor of the carnage. 17-year-old Raymond Childs III was automatically charged as an adult per Indiana state law, ineligible for the death penalty but facing a potential prison sentence of 45 years to life without parole. According to published reports, it seems that Raymond Childs Jr. started several music production companies to leave his kids a legacy, and the 2 firearms recovered in this case can be seen in music videos I've linked in the sources. A few weeks later, and just 2 days before Valentine's Day, a young newlywed's life was abruptly and senselessly cut short. On February 12, 2021, 21-year-old Isabella Calhoun Chipress ended her shift at the IKEA in San Diego, California just after 10 p.m. and headed home, where she lived with her mother and husband. The pair had married in June 2020 and were preparing to leave for Marine Corps boot camp in South Carolina. They had enlisted together. As Isabella closed in on the last 2 blocks of her journey home, a stolen vehicle and police pursuit were heading her way. Behind the wheel of the minivan stolen 2 weeks earlier sat a 17-year-old who was spotted driving without lights on around Grand Avenue and San Francisco Street, 15 miles east of San Diego in La Presa, California. A traffic stop was initiated, however the officer ended up giving chase once the stolen van sped off, running the red light at Jamocha and Sweetwater roads where it struck 2 vehicles at a high rate of speed. In addition to Isabella's car, A car carrying 2 men and a toddler was also hit by the fleeing van, and those 3 occupants sustained survivable injuries. However, Isabella Chipress did not. She was rushed to the hospital but tragically was too badly injured. Both Isabella's mother and husband had called her and received no answer. According to the San Diego Union Tribune, Isabella's husband encountered the accident scene and the mangled wreckage as he drove home from his own mother's house, though his wife's car was so heavily damaged that it was unrecognizable, even to him. Isabella's mother, after her phone calls went unanswered, hopped in her car and went to physically search for her daughter. It took only moments for her to also encounter the scene, see her son-in-law there, and hear the news that is every person's nightmare, that her loved one was injured and unlikely to survive. Following a brief attempt to flee, the 17-year-old driver was arrested at the scene on suspicion of gross vehicular manslaughter and possession of a stolen vehicle. He had been drinking and was over the legal limit for driving as an adult. His 16-year-old passenger was found to be in possession of a handgun. The driver is now facing charges of gross vehicular manslaughter, hit and run, evading police causing great bodily injury, possession of a stolen vehicle, firearm possession, and driving under the influence. He pleaded not guilty nearly 1 month after the car crash he caused on March 10, 2021. Prosecutors aimed to try him as an adult. Less than 1 hour later and just 40 miles north, doorbell surveillance footage captured a white Ford Explorer going practically airborne as it soared through the intersection of Mission Avenue and Ash Street in the North County San Diego city of Escondido, California. The SUV crashed into some bushes and a roadside planter located just outside a San Diego gas and electric transfer station around 11:15 p.m. on February 12, 2021. Behind the wheel was a 13-year-old girl from nearby Vista, California, who had taken her mother's vehicle without permission. She had a 13-year-old passenger as well. On Mission Avenue and Gamble Street, about 15 minutes from the city of Vista, Escondido police attempted to perform a traffic stop on the Explorer. However, as the officer approached the driver's side window, the young driver took off and lost control about 5 blocks later as she attempted to make a left turn onto Ash Street from Mission Avenue. The teen took off and lost control about 5 blocks later as she attempted to make a left turn onto Ash Street from Mission Avenue. After coming to a stop at the planter, the driver tried to flee on foot but was also quickly apprehended. Upon closer inspection, investigators found that the Ford Explorer had driven through some bushes and struck 2 men who had been sleeping behind them. Killed that night were 32-year-old Mateo Salvador and 51-year-old Sofio Sotelo Torres. He was remembered by friends as having the biggest heart and being of a generous nature. There was a home and bed he could sleep in, but family members say he chose to stay with his less fortunate friends, working as a day laborer in the years since his own landscaping business had become unsustainable. Torres used whatever money he made to feed himself and those he spent time with. Following the crash, the 13-year-old driver and passenger were released into the custody of their parents. Then almost 6 weeks later, on March 25, 2021, the 13-year-old driver was arrested, taken into custody, and booked into juvenile hall, charged with 2 counts of vehicular manslaughter, felony hit and run causing death or serious injury, and evading police causing injury or death. Since she is under 16 years of age, under California law, her case will remain in juvenile court. She has pleaded not guilty. 5 days later, on February 17, 2021, at just past 5 p.m., a violent collision occurred at the intersection of Overland Avenue and Olympic Boulevard in Los Angeles, California, less than 2 hours north of Escondido. Behind the wheel of the sleek black Lamborghini Urus SUV was the 17-year-old son of e-commerce mogul James Curry, who had gifted his son the more than $200,000 luxury vehicle for his 17th birthday last year. The teen's provisional driver's license had reportedly been suspended in late 2020, which, like a learner's permit, requires an adult to be present while the new driver is behind the wheel. The Los Angeles Times reported that in October 2020, the teen had been cited for driving 72 miles per hour in a residential neighborhood, then ticketed for speeding again 3 weeks later, after which his Lamborghini was impounded and his limited driving privileges suspended. Prosecutors allege that the Lamborghini's aggressive swerving between lanes in concert with an Audi driven by his friend was tantamount to racing. At the intersection of Olympic and Overland, the SUV crashed so violently into the Lexus sedan being driven by 32-year-old Monique Munoz that the car was nearly split in two. The aspiring lawyer was on her way home from her new job as receptionist at a UCLA clinic. She had been attempting a left turn when she was broadsided and her Lexus flung into a tree trunk. Once extricated from her car, Monique was pronounced dead at the scene. The 17-year-old driver sustained head injuries and was absentee booked a week later while hospitalized. His attorney spoke with Fox News saying that the teen had suffered a traumatic brain injury in the accident and maintained that no racing had been involved. Prosecutors allege that he was traveling 106 miles per hour just prior to the collision. The family and friends of Monique Munoz set up a memorial near the scene and began to demand justice for their loved one. The young woman was remembered as accomplished and the heart of happiness for her family. Though the teen was booked on February 23, 2021, it wasn't until April 8th that the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office filed official charges, causing outrage to many and prompting accusations of preferential treatment considering the driver's father's wealth and status. On April 23, 2021, as Monique's friends and family protested outside, the teen appeared in Inglewood Juvenile Court and admitted to felony vehicular manslaughter with gross negligence, after which he was sent home with an ankle monitor to await his sentencing scheduled for August. A June 30, 2021 deposition setting hearing will be the next time he appears in court. On March 10th, more than 3 weeks after the crash, James Curry gave an interview regarding his son's accident and posted a statement on Instagram, marking his only statement so far about the crash. A June 30th, 2021 deposition setting hearing will be the next time he appears in court. Monique's family and friends recognize that progress is being made, however, they want the teen tried in adult court and sentenced to a lengthy jail term. Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon told ABC7, quote, "The commitments that I made when I ran for office, and I was very clear, is that we would follow the science and data, and when it came to juveniles, we will not refer juveniles to adult court." The following month, on the other side of the country near Washington, D.C., 13 and 15-year-old girls armed with at least one stun gun carjacked 66-year-old Mohammad Anwar of Springfield, Virginia, while he was working as an Uber Eats driver. At 4:30 p.m. on March 23, 2021, Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police responded to the 1200 block of Van Street Southeast, about a block from Major League Baseball's Washington Nationals Park, on reports of a motor vehicle accident. What they encountered, however, was the harrowing aftermath of a violent carjacking caught on tape. Footage from a bystander shows how the incident played out, beginning with a shot through the front windshield of Mohammad Anwar's Honda Accord. He had been sitting inside of it near the Navy Yard metro station when the 13 and 15-year-old girls got in. The video picks up with Mohammad standing outside the car between the car and the driver's side door. From inside, the older teen can be seen in the driver's seat, while the 13-year-old is in the passenger seat. One of the girls yelled that he had her phone, he yelled that this was his car, and Mohammad ended up trying to climb back inside. It's not known if he was aware that the teens had at least one stun gun. The 15-year-old in the driver's seat was revving the engine as Mohammad tried to climb over her and get back in, which is when the 13-year-old manipulated the gear shift, causing the car to accelerate rapidly down the street. The bystander video shows the Honda take off at a shocking rate of speed with Mohammad Anwar holding on to the doorframe. The car strikes two obstructions on the driver's side, a metal barrier and a light pole, causing the man to be slammed violently by the door both times. The car then swings wildly back into the road and directly into a sharp right turn onto adjacent North Street Southeast, followed by the ear-splitting, unmistakable sound of a car crash. The Honda had struck the front end of a car parked on the other side of that street, coming to rest on its driver's side door, its owner flung violently into a fence before landing on the sidewalk. The teen carjackers climbed out of Mohammad Anwar's car through the passenger side window, aided by some National Guardsmen who happened to be right there. One of the girls kept trying to get back to the car to get her cell phone, but the soldiers pushed all the bystanders back away from the injured man and the shocking scene. 66-year-old Mohammad Anwar was pronounced dead at the hospital shortly after the carjacking of broken bones and head trauma. He leaves behind his wife, 3 children, and 4 grandchildren, and was at work simply doing his job when he was killed, his immediate family's sole provider. The GoFundMe donation account started for Mohammad's family had a beginning goal of $100,000, but was deactivated when it reached $1 million. The 2 teens were charged with felony murder and armed carjacking on March 23, 2021. According to published reports, at least one of the teens had been arrested multiple times for similar crimes, including just 2 months before. A few weeks later, the media began to indicate that the prosecutors were working on plea deals for the teen carjackers for second-degree murder and weapons charges, and on May 5, 2021, the 15-year-old girl pleaded guilty to felony murder as a juvenile in exchange for all other charges being dropped. On June 4, 2021, the now 16-year-old was remanded into custody of the D.C. Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services until after she turns 21, the maximum sentence possible. Her 13-year-old accomplice also pleaded guilty to second-degree murder on June 4th, and though she will be formally sentenced in July, she too will likely be incarcerated until after she turns 21 years old. Fun fact: most home remedies and over-the-counter acne products don't work, and even worse, they can really damage your skin. But do you know what actually does work? Prescription treatments. That's why we're excited to partner with Apostrophe, the sponsor of this episode. Wearing a mask over the past year has proven a good way to hide blemishes, but I have to admit that it's caused a few too. I can't hide my face full of little clear pimple stickers under a mask for much longer, so it's been the perfect time to work on my complexion from home with Apostrophe, the prescription skincare company that offers science-backed oral and topical medications that are clinically proven to help clear acne. I was a bit overzealous at first and ran out of my topical prescription way earlier than I should have, but I was so excited to be able to order more anyway, allowing me to stay on track with my treatment plan. And don't forget that Apostrophe treats acne, but they can also help you hit your other skincare goals, like reducing redness, wrinkles, and even dark spots. We have a special deal for our audience. Save $15 off your first visit with a board-certified dermatologist at apostrophe.com/warbaby when you use our code WARBABY. This code is only available to our listeners. To get started, just go to apostrophe.com/warbaby and click Begin Visit. Then use our code WARBABY at sign up and you'll get $15 off your dermatology visit. That's APOSTROPHE.com/warbaby and use that code warbaby to get your dermatology visit and save $15. And we thank Apostrophe for sponsoring this podcast. 2 weeks after Mohammad Anwar was killed in Washington, D.C., 18-year-old Aaron Guerrero quietly ran away from home in Las Vegas, Nevada. In the early morning hours of April 8th, 2021, he headed for his 16-year-old girlfriend Sierra Halseth's house, where she lived with her 42-year-old father, Daniel. Sierra's mother is a former Republican state senator for Nevada, and her parents divorced a few years ago after their volatile relationship and her resignation from her seat played out in the local media. Following its finalization, both remarried, with Sierra's mother, stepfather, and siblings moving to Alaska, then returning to Nevada. She was reportedly supposed to be living with her mother. Once Aaron Guerrero reached Daniel's house, he and Sierra set about withdrawing cash from several ATMs using Daniel's card. They were then caught on surveillance cameras shopping, buying bleach, disposable gloves, drop cloths, lighter fluid, a handsaw, a circular saw, and saw blades. Daniel's second ex-wife had seen these random transactions made on the joint checking account they still shared and tried to get a hold of him repeatedly. His mother had also been trying to reach him on April 8th and called her granddaughter Sierra instead, who told her that her dad's phone was broken. She called Sierra again at 10 a.m. on April 9th, 2021, at which time the teen told her grandmother that her father was in the shower. The teens had by then stabbed 42-year-old Daniel Halseth to death and attempted to dismember his body with the new saws, but ended up setting him on fire instead. After hanging up on her grandmother, Sierra must have decided it was time to go because cameras in the area captured them driving away about 20 minutes later. This is also around the time that Daniel's mother, having spoken to his ex-wife about the suspicious withdrawals, called the owner of the home her son was renting and asked his friend and landlord to go by and check out the situation. She arrived a few hours later when she could, having another friend meet her there because she was scared, and entered the home, which reeked of lighter fluid and smoke, seeing a charred patch of carpet upon entry. A circular saw was on the table, a chainsaw was in the living room, and folding pocket knives were found in the kitchen sink. Daniel's charred remains were discovered near the garage door. Guerrero's parents came to the crime scene looking for their runaway son, at which time officers learned that Daniel Halseth had brought to their attention that their kids were going to run away together. The pair had been dating since June and were quickly ordered to break up. 5 days after they were seen driving away together, the couple was captured in Utah and returned to Las Vegas, Nevada. They appeared in court on April 28, 2021, and are currently being held without bail. Receipts found inside Daniel's home led investigators to the security footage from the stores. On May 21, 2021, 16-year-old Sierra Halseth and 18-year-old Aaron Guerrero were indicted in the murder of her 42-year-old father, Daniel Halseth, on charges of murder with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit murder, first-degree arson, 4 counts of credit card fraud, conspiracy to commit robbery, and robbery with a deadly weapon. In addition to the video footage from the stores, police also recovered a video from Sierra's cell phone, which showed she and Aaron 3 days after Daniel's murder saying that, quote, this was their YouTube channel, then joking about how Aaron had killed Daniel in exchange for sex with Sierra. At their most recent hearing a few weeks ago on May 26, 2021, Chief Deputy District Attorney Christopher Hammer said that the decision over whether to seek the death penalty for Aaron Guerrero would be made sometime within the next month, which is not a choice in the case of the victim's daughter, Sierra Halseth, since she is a minor. Before I go, there has been a development in the Mother's Day murder of 13-year-old Tristan Bailey, just south of Jacksonville, Florida. Her neighbor and classmate, 14-year-old Aiden Fucci, has already been arrested and charged with first-degree premeditated murder in her stabbing death. But on Saturday, June 5, 2021, 35-year-old Crystal Smith, the mother of Aiden Fucci, was arrested on a charge of tampering with evidence. According to the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office, just under 3 hours after Tristan was reported missing on May 9th, deputies took Aiden from his home so he could show them where he'd last seen Tristan, and while he was gone, security cameras inside his home captured his mother removing the jeans he'd been wearing the night before and attempting to clean the blood out of them. Law enforcement soon obtained the clothing, and the blood on them was determined to belong to Tristan Bailey. The video shows Smith retrieving the jeans from Fucci's bedroom, then taking them to the master bedroom, returning them after about 10 minutes. A second person is also seen on the camera footage inside the home, looking at the jeans with Smith. The witness told investigators that she was asked to look at them to see if there was anything visible. Crystal Smith turned herself in on Saturday, June 5, 2021, and was released the same day after posting bond. Her son, the 14-year-old murder suspect Aiden Fucci, has been in the juvenile wing of the Duval County Jail, with his next court appearance scheduled for July of 2021. Be back soon with our 100th episode, so until then, lovelies, don't be scared.